All right, welcome everybody. This is Derek Bodner, joined by Rich Hofmann. On this week's Sixers Beat, a part of the CLNS Media Network. How you doing, Rich?
I'm good, man. Philly's got Bryce Harper. Who cares about the Sixers?
They did. And I had the perfect timing of releasing a Jonah Bolden article about 10 minutes after the Bryce Harper news came out. That was not my most well-trafficked article in my history at The Athletic. There wasn't a whole lot of interest in the Sixers backup big man rotation. It is hard to complain from our perspective, though, getting the, probably the biggest free agent signings since Moses in the town. Like, is that fair to say? I heard this being debated, actually. Somebody brought up T.O. And T.O. was interesting because
technically a trade to T.O., I believe.
Yeah, but because they came to agreement and whatever. It's like a NFL version of a sign and trade. But that was important because it was like so obvious, oh, wow, that team should win a Super Bowl or at least get to one. But when you start talking about 13 years and this guy's 26 years old, I'd have to go back to Moses before I think I found something that important, that meaningful, and that could really change the future of a franchise. But we do not cover that team.
It was cool. It was cool though, man. It was a rookie move on your behalf, putting the Bolden article out. But we just let Matt and Megan get all the glory, which deservedly so. And now Bryce Harper can buy Sam Hinkie's house. So
yes, I will say there's no sport, I don't think at least, where the difference between the interest level in a bad team and a good team is more drastic. Like, you go to the ballpark when it's a great Phillies team and there's an electricity to it. And then you go there in a 70-win season and it's just dead. And I'm very excited to have meaningful baseball back. I'm very excited to see Citizens Bank Park electric like it was during that run. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a couple hundred more sellouts in a row. But that is very happy to see it. Very happy to see it. But we are not
it makes your summer so much better.
100%. 100%. I missed baseball in my life. All right. Moving on to the team that we do actually cover, another team that is not bad. The Philadelphia 76ers. They've won now what? They are 6-3 since the Tobias Harris trade. Most recently beat the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road. They were without Paul George, of course. Sixers without Joel Embiid, and lost a tough one last night to the Golden State Warriors. I guess we'll probably start off there. That's most recent, the one that most people want to talk about. An interesting end of the game. One of the best halves of basketball they've played in that first half. And then a very interesting end to it. And by interesting, I mean frustrating and one that there's a lot of points we can debate. Your overall thoughts on their performance?
I was, although they certainly slowed down in the second half, and I thought, we can talk about the late game situational stuff, and it kind of felt like one of the games from the late Andy Reid years when the Eagles would lose, when all we were talking about was the situational timeout and how the Sixers kind of approached time management at the end of the game. I thought the game wasn't lost there, though. The Sixers, couple things. In the third quarter, Kevin Durant was a monster, and there's only so much you can do about that. But certainly, the Warriors basically had, it was like almost like a process Sixers lineup out there. It was like Quinn Cook and Damian Lee, and Durant just willed them to, I think it was like a 39-25 third quarter. So,
Drexel's own Damian Lee.
I know.
There are not too many dragons in the NBA. So it's nice to see him carve out a career, but you're right. He's a little bit of a process player. Yeah.
Yes. And I just thought, towards the end of the game, especially when they had Iguodala and Draymond and KD in the game, it just felt like the Sixers weren't getting anything easily offensively. The Warriors have kind of been a team all year where they've been half asleep defensively, but they kind of showed me in that game that, and it's not surprising. It's not something I didn't know already, that they have an extra gear to get to, and Draymond defended Simmons much better in the second half. Yeah, I think it's like you said, the first half of basketball they played was just tremendous. I mean, Simmons and Harris were just attacking mismatches. They were getting out in transition. TJ was making plays. It was, I know there was a lot of angst about how the game ended and, some of the frustrating decisions and just missed open shots. I think they went, before those two, the Mike Scott foul and the Ben Simmons missed free throw that did not hit the rim. I think, the 3 possessions Harris hit a 3 before then, but there were 3 possessions in a row, wide open JJ Redick shot, and my God, is he struggling. Miss. Open JJ Redick floater, miss. Open Tobias Harris 3, miss. So I get that those things were frustrating, but overall, I thought the Sixers competed pretty well. And, we talk about how hard it is to play without Joel Embiid. And, I think the last time we were in the Wells Fargo Center, they played the Portland Trailblazers and they just looked totally outmatched. I didn't really get that feeling last night. The Warriors, they obviously are the favorites to win the title, and the Sixers battled them. And, they came up a little bit short. There are certainly things they need to work out, I think, on the offensive end. I thought Draymond really guarded Simmons well in a way that it really wasn't the case when they played in Oakland. Ben was fantastic, and Ben was really good in this game too. But the 9 turnovers kind of put a dent in his performance. But yeah, overall, I don't know. I couldn't get too frustrated about that game.
No, and I thought that game, and I haven't had a chance to go back and rewatch it. And I watched watch it the initial time in a sports bar with a whole bunch of analytics nerds, so I don't have maybe the best perspective on this yet. But I thought that game was lost when JJ Redick missed that 3 and that floater. Like that's when I thought that was your chance. Those were good looks.
Great looks.
Redick is in a horrible slump, and those kind of things happen. What doesn't happen is maybe that end of game stuff. That Mike Scott foul is just inexcusable. That can never happen. Maybe you want to say that the coaching staff should have communicated that to him a little more effectively. But a player's got to have some situational awareness too. And people are gonna want to criticize the coaching staff, and that's not like there's a 0% chance that foul was called for. Like that is a player having a brain fart, and that it can't happen. Like that was a huge mistake. The Simmons free throw, and I know Brett said that he told them to do that. And I think I saw you going a little bit back and forth on it on Twitter. I think 10 seconds is too much time for that. Like I wouldn't have done that. And the only reason you think about it is because Golden State is such a good free throw shooting team and Ben Simmons is not. But it's just I'd love to see the statistics on how frequently that missed free throw actually works, that intentionally missed free throw. I don't think people know how to do that. And I think I've seen Danny LaRue mention this a lot, but like nobody can actually execute that well.
I like to try, but I agree with you. The success isn't high. Like, I don't think trying to miss it normally ever works. I think you basically have to rifle it off the rim for it to work.
So I think you take the 50-50 shot that Simmons, a little better, 59% or whatever it is shot that Simmons makes that second free throw. And then you hope you get the ball back. I don't think a lot of people said that you shouldn't have had Simmons bring the ball up the court with 20 seconds left or whatever it was. Golden State wasn't trying to foul him there. Like Draymond Green, that was not an intentional foul. You can maybe argue that it should have been, that it was a good outcome before Golden State, and I think that is true. But the Sixers had to execute a play there. It is difficult when you're primary ball handler and best shot creator for others, and somebody you rely on for a lot of your primary actions is such a poor free throw shooter. But my biggest complaint was a Mike Scott foul. And then I do think I just don't think I would have tried to intentionally miss that second one.
Mike Scott, to his credit, after the game said Mike Scott did not say it in these exact words, but he said, "Yep, that was a brain fart. I got to be better." Brett obviously said, I watched the TV replay and you could see Brett was just like, you shouldn't have fouled there. And that's what he said after the game. That was not smart. That was crazy that you just wrap the guy up. There's 35 seconds left.
On a one possession game.
Yeah.
You almost never see that. It was, oof.
I've been thinking about the free throw probably way too much because again, I don't think it's that important in the overall context of what to take away from the game. I was thinking like I wish there was like a fourth down bot that they have the New York Times though, where we could kind of see the probabilities, and there's no way that exists because there's probably just too many variables to even account for. I think I agree with you though. I think overall you look at it, you say, all right, Ben, try and make the second one. We will foul right away. They will probably make two because they have two 90% free throw shooters. But
right.
you foul, maybe they miss one, and Katie did miss one after that. So, and then worst case scenario, you're doing that all over again with I don't know 5 or 6 seconds. I didn't love the way Simmons was going about that play though. I feel like you got to get him going downhill in some way. He was like posting up Draymond 40 feet from the hoop. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
he was like
he didn't seem like he entirely knew how to attack Draymond's pressure for sure. He was thrown off a bit.
I don't think they were finding a good 3-point look on that one. Yeah, so it was. Hey, look, I'm not trying to diminish that. I don't think they handled the end of that game very well, but yeah. The speaking of Mike Scott, I always think back to his opening press conference here. He don't give a shit, man. He's firing threes.
Yes.
He that was kind of the other takeaway from the game that I thought was interesting, in that as soon as Boban is not in the lineup anymore, now the Sixers are on the other end of that give and take when they're playing DeMarcus Cousins, and now they have the small centers that are shooting bombs, and Cousins is bullying them on the other end. And both Bolden and Scott, I mean, they really couldn't handle Cousins down low. He's just too strong. And they both, I talked to both of those guys after the game, and they said, yeah, you just got to try and hang on and fight with them and, do your best. But to those guys' credit, I think they made 9 combined threes. And, that's how you deal with somebody like Cousins. You put him in pick and rolls, and, the Sixers put Cousins, they targeted him in a lot of pick and rolls in the second half, but a lot of those threes were just kind of Cousins helping too far off drives. But credit to Mike Scott and Jonah Bolden for making threes. But I think with those guys, you kind of did see the weakness on defense is that if there is like a super strong guy who can post up, those guys aren't really equipped. You kind of saw that too with Steven Adams in Oklahoma City the night before.
Yeah. Yeah. And even going back to the Blazers game, the couple minutes that Bolden did play, although he wasn't so much muscled out of the way for offensive rebounds in that one as he was just out too far on the perimeter, too far extended. But it was great to see Mike Scott get that game. Like, he had been struggling a little bit from the perimeter. It's good to see Jonah Bolden continue to flash at times, either a really hard ball that bounces off the rim or one that he goes 3 for 4 from 3. But it's good to see we're getting a little more of the latter there. He's had a couple good games.
I was thinking about this. His 3-point percentage might be above his free throw percentage at some point. I mean, he's still got a little bit of a ways to go. Like, I think it's like 14%, but it's not too far. I think he's only a 32% 3-point shooter, but I think going into the year, we would have taken the 32%.
Yeah, well, at one point he was down at like 18% earlier in the season, so he's been shooting the ball better. I don't entirely trust it.
59 attempts, you don't trust it?
No. Over the last 3 or 4 games, he's been shooting the ball well, which is good to see. What else from that game? I guess going into Bolden and Scott, before I left for Boston, when they played Portland and got absolutely destroyed, Brown mentioned about the backup center rotation. He's like, look, last year I played Amir all regular season, and then when the playoffs came around, Ilyasova was our backup center. And obviously it's hard to read too much into that now because you've got so many people in Embiid and Boban injured. But it does seem like he's really giving Mike Scott a legitimate run as a backup center. He doesn't really have a whole lot of choice right now unless he wants to go with Justin Patton or apparently sign Andrew Bogut out of the NBL, which is apparently a possibility that exists. Not that there would be a rule preventing it, but like didn't even think he was on the radar.
No, he owns a team down there.
Does he?
Yeah, that's how they
have not read too much about Andrew Bogut's NBL career.
That's how they lured him down to Australia. They gave him part ownership of a team.
There you go. Do you think that Mike Scott backup center is a real, like if you're ranking the probability of who gets that backup center role when the playoffs roll around, is that a real legitimate, like, is that a good chance of happening?
I think it all kind of depends on the matchup, but yeah, like, I mean, the guy is really comfortable shooting a three. And if you want to say, we got to get to 10 minutes without Joe, hopefully in the playoffs, and say, all right, well, this team, they don't have much of a post up threat. Maybe they have a kind of a pick and roll type guy where maybe Mike Scott's deficiencies are kind of, they're not as damaging to your defense overall. But yeah, I mean, if you want to play with Simmons, it's kind of what they did with Ilyasova last year. Although I think Ilyasova is clearly a better defender than Mike Scott. I don't know. Mike Scott can't even measure up to the charge taking of Ilyasova. But I think, if you want to say, all right, let's just try and outscore these guys and play 5 out and give Ben space. Yeah, I think there is a chance of it. I guess what I would say is that I have no idea what the hell they're going to do with the backup center option. They have 3 options right now, maybe 4 if Bogut comes here. And I don't feel like we're any closer to figuring out which one is going to get the shot in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I think there will be matchups where Boban is a legitimate option, and then matchups where you got to figure out what the hell to do. And Mike Scott, I think, will be one of the answers of what to do in those spots. I think it's pretty clear that they don't fully trust Jonah Bolden right now, which is not entirely, it's understandable to some degree. Like, he is a rookie. He does make rookie mistakes. Every time I look at the numbers, the defensive numbers with him at center, I'm surprised at how bad they are, because they are really, really bad. And it's not to the point where you can look at those and trust them completely, but we are getting up to 450 plus odd possessions of data. And I think if you look closely, I think there's a lot of rotations that he misses a lot of times where he's a little overeager, a little bit of the Rashawn effect, except that Rashawn didn't improve at all in 3 years that he was here. So, I'm still pretty bullish on Jonah Bolden long-term potential as a defensive center. If they're going to tell me that they're not 100% confident in his being up to speed by the time the playoffs roll around, then I think Mike Scott is a pretty legitimate option. Not legitimate in terms of you're not going to worry about him defensively, but legitimate in that there is no other real clear-cut way to go.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but I also think, what stat would separate those two? And it's not even a stat. It's that Mike Scott is a veteran and Jonah Bolden is a rookie. And Brett, not unlike a lot of coaches, I think, tie goes to the guy who's been in the league for a lot longer.
Right. A tie goes to the guy that you can, it feels really dumb saying this after the mistake he made last night, but a tie goes to the guy that you can rely on in terms of decision making.
Just tell him, don't foul when you absolutely shouldn't foul. Right. I don't know. Mike Scott's growing on me a little bit though. He brings a little bit of an edge, and
yes, he does.
That helps. I think for a bench guy that can be a useful tool.
Yes, it sure can. All right, but real quick before we move on, a word from Robinhood. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, options, ETFs, and cryptocurrencies, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees at all, so you can trade stocks and keep all of your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit required to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike, with easy-to-understand charts and market data, allowing you to place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone, and while providing you with the ability to view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of the Sixers Beat a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at sixers.robinhood.com. That's sixers.robinhood.com. All right, moving on. I guess let's go to Embiid. He had sort of an update before the Golden State game, so why don't you walk us through what he said and what your expectations are for the near future?
Well, first off, I was stunned that he talked. And there were a lot of people who were in there last night thinking, "Oh man, this is going to be a bad update." And I was thinking, "Nah, it's probably not going to be a bad update because that would be Elton who would give it." But yeah, it was very much a non-update. He just kind of explained why he was sitting out, and I think he talked about that the big thing, and it's something in our writing that he does not like to sit, and he talked that he basically said that he's mature enough now to handle that. Like he's willing to sit down when the team says he should sit. He said that this was his decision. He came to the team before the All-Star break after the All-Star break and said that he wants to sit, and just it had not been getting any better, and yeah, that he was not only looking at this year's playoffs as a target date. He wants to be healthy for the next 15 years, which all sounds good. I don't really think it's any bit of news. He said that he's going to be back by next week, was as close as we got him to. He kept saying like, well, I'm not going to put a date on it, and we kept pestering him enough to where he said, no, I'll be back by next week. I don't know exactly what that means, but yeah, he's going to be out for, seems like, a few more games. It's just tendonitis in his knee. Worked out before the game, not like a goofball, which was different, but I guess when you don't play in an actual game, you take the pregame workout a little bit more seriously. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, the question will always be like, how much is he really going to fix it right now? How much is it more getting him through the season? I mean, this has been lingering now for, 2 solid months. So is this really going to fix it? Is it probably something where he might need to take a day or two off down the stretch? Hopefully when you get into playoffs and the games are not quite as packed. But then again, you're playing more minutes. So we'll see how this kind of lingers throughout the season. It does seem, like you said, that he will be back relatively soon, which is good to hear. But underlying knee soreness, we'll see. It's not the not the greatest, news, but not the worst update, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, and just so
not much of an update either.
And just so everybody knows, he was asked about the All-Star game. The explanation wasn't that good. It was unclear. I mean, it was like, I was having soreness, but then for the All-Star game, I wasn't having soreness. And you're thinking like, well, that doesn't make a ton of sense, but whatever. At this point, it's like, all right, that's over with. Like you're dealing with this now, whatever. Yeah. So, and he did mention that the team had approached him even before, a couple weeks before the All-Star break, and they wanted him to take a little bit of time, but I guess he wasn't quite ready. He did mention too that he thinks it's with the team playing well and Tobias and Jimmy here now, that it's not the main driving factor behind him sitting, but he does feel just naturally a little bit better. Like these guys can handle it until I get back.
Yeah. All right. So moving on from there to something that is somewhat related to Embiid. Josh Harris spoke at the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, which is where I was and why you haven't seen a whole lot of activity from me these past few days. Also why I've been letting Rich really run this podcast a little bit, because I have not had a chance to watch the entire game. Like I mentioned, I was in a sports bar last night watching with all these stat nerds up at Sloan. But Josh Harris spoke at Sloan, then spoke to Jackie McMullen at ESPN. Had some not entirely unexpected comments, but two that kind of stuck out. First of all, that would be problematic if the Sixers lost to Boston, or I guess anybody else in the opening round of the playoffs. It would be very problematic. It would not be what we're playing for. We'd be unhappy, blah, blah, blah. The city would be unhappy, yada, yada, yada. We have enough talent on our roster that if we play the way we're capable of playing, we can beat any team in the East, which, I mean, not earth-shattering at all. Like, I think everybody understands that there are expectations around the talent that has been, put together here. I think a lot of people want to read it in that. What does that mean? Does that mean that, there would be a coaching staff change if that happened, or an overhaul of the roster? I don't necessarily think it means like there would be drastic changes, but it's just an acknowledgement that there is an expectation that they will get far in the playoff. And the other thing is about keeping both Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris in the offseason. We gave up a lot to get Tobias and Jimmy on our team. We think they're exceptional talents. We're going to try to keep them. We know we're going to have to pay these guys in an appropriate way, and that he gets it. It will be expensive, which he said on the panel at Sloan, basically reinforcing that he is going to do, or he is willing to do, what it takes to keep this core around, which is something that Elton Brand has said during some of his media availability as well. So again, nothing necessarily earth-shattering, but the Sixers managing partner did speak.
So on the note about the potential coaching change, Brett was asked about this during his pregame availability last night, and I forget who asked it. It might have been Gordy Jones, who basically was like, Josh Harris had these comments about it would be a disappointment if you guys didn't make the second round, and he said, "Do you have any reaction to what he said?" And Brett goes, "No, I have no reaction," and that's all he said. And I think even everybody who does not cover the team on a daily basis knows that Brett Brown is not that succinct when it comes to his answers. No. Not even close. So, there was no follow up to that. It was just kind of, it's kind of awkward in the room when you get an answer like that, because you're so used to him giving a detailed, kind of cheery, minute-long answer at least.
Yeah.
And you didn't get that one there. So just file that away. I thought that was odd. A couple of other writers there mentioned that they thought it was a little bit strange. Maybe you just didn't want to. I don't know. It was that was a little bit strange. The other part of the story that was interesting was, and I don't think this is anything that's surprising, but it seemed like Josh Harris kind of in detail described how the Sixers ownership and the front office clue Joel Embiid in when they make moves. And
oh yes, yep,
yeah, and they give him a heads up. Harris said, it's not like he's running the team. It's not like if there's an awkward situation for him, maybe they won't clue him in. But it's kind of like what the Eagles do with Carson Wentz, where they just he's going to be the crown jewel of the team, and they want him to feel somewhat involved. And yeah, I thought that was A, it was pretty interesting, and B, I think that's probably about right.
Yeah, I mean, look, NBA superstars have a lot. Like, I don't think people truly understand exactly how much power what these NBA superstars, these top 5, top 7, top 10 players in the game truly have. Like, they are the most important people in their organizations, not counting ownership. And that is true for almost every superstar in the league. That is certainly true for Joel Embiid, and it's good to keep him, in the loop. And, you can go back to some of the comments Brett has made, and he's gone out of his way a number of times here since all of these trades to bring in Butler and Tobias. And we need to be clear on something. Joel is still the crown jewel. And he has gone really far out of his way to make that point known. They clearly want to keep, like you said, Joel involved, feel like he has a they feel that he is included in these kinds of major discussions. It's the reality of NBA basketball in 2019. It's probably been the reality of NBA basketball the entire time. I think we're just now maybe a little bit more aware of it.
I think the players are more aware of it now too.
Yeah, for sure. But look, Porzingis just got himself traded. Anthony Davis just made an ultimatum publicly to his team. LeBron James is literally building out his own roster, very poorly, but he's building out his own roster. This is what superstars do. It's the nature of the game. Kevin Durant there's open speculation about where he's going to play. Superstars attract other superstars. They get to make their own decisions. They get to force their way to their own teams. There's more player empowerment than acknowledged player empowerment than there's ever been in the sport, and they need to keep him happy. Like, the number one thing that could go wrong in this rebuild is you can piss off Joel Embiid, and it's very important that they don't do that. It's part of the reason why, not to get too far back into a tanking debate, but why a 1-year tank just to get Joel Embiid wasn't necessarily what they needed to do, because keeping Joel happy is extremely important. Having the draft picks to make these trades, having the second superstar in Ben Simmons, having the cap flexibility to go out and try to get complementary role players is very important, because you can't have Joel Embiid winning 45 games for 6 or 7 years and pissed off and end up in an Anthony Davis situation, because you are not going to win that staring match. So keep him happy, do what you got to do. Hopefully Joel is responsible with the power that he does have, and we don't have to really talk about this all that often.
He is the most powerful guy in that organization, and you do have to acknowledge that. Speaking of Speaking of the tank,
he loves to bring up that
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say he loves to bring up the fact that he dunked on Elton Brand back when they played together for that preseason. He could still dunk on Elton Brand if he wants to, and I just hope that he doesn't necessarily abuse that power.
That would be mean if he was like, "I'm leaving if you don't come into the gym and let me dunk on you again." That would be quite the story. Speaking of it
would be even meaner if he didn't do that while we were in the room, though. Like, we want to see that if that happens.
Yes. Speaking of the tank, what I'm just curious about this, because you mentioned you were at Sloan. What just from reading Gonzo's article last year on this, is Hinkie still like the biggest rock star in the world there?
I mean, he's talking the entire time. It's funny. I probably wasted about a half an hour of Sam's time over the past 2 days, because there would be, all of the conversations at Sloan happen there's basically 2 hallways at the Heinz Convention Center where this is taking place. And you've got everybody in kind of, the various lecture halls, the various halls. And then for the most part, people are listening to that, but a lot of people are just out roaming the hallway, talking to people. It's a really great networking event. So I'd be out in the hallway, like Sam would be like, down the hallway, 20, 30 feet, whatever. And at least 4 different times, a Sixers fan, because there's a lot of students at Sloan, would see both of us. And, I'm more approachable because, I'm not, I think you see an NBA GM as a fan and you can get a little bit intimidated. So they'd come up to me and he'd be like, "Oh man, can you believe that? Like, Sam's right down the hallway. You could walk up and just talk to him." Like, what do you mean you could walk up? Just go up and talk to him. He is hounded pretty frequently there. He wasn't on a lecture this time, whereas last year he gave a talk. He was on a panel.
Yeah, he was getting like cheered like crazy, like
pretty big ovation. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So that didn't happen this time, but he is a busy person there for sure. He is a little bit of a cult hero.
Yeah. Well, that's
which there's a surprising number of Sixers fans up there. Like, had a bunch of really good conversations with the Sixers fans that made the trek. In all honesty, it's not cheap, especially if you can't get a student ticket. But I would certainly recommend it. It is one of the better networking events of the season, and it's a real who's who up there. So
that's good.
It's a good time.
Unrelated, I was looking at a couple of schedule related things, just where the Sixers are going to finish down the stretch.
Well, okay. Before we get to that, one real quick word from Bet Online. we're heading down the stretch run of the NBA season, and as an exciting playoff race unfolds, there's only one place to go for all of your sports betting needs: betonline.ag. Sports, casino, virtual casino, you name it, betonline.ag is Sixers Beat and CLNS Media's preferred sportsbook online, and they're offering a 50% sign-up bonus if you use the promo code CLNS50. This week features a number of important games in the NBA schedule, which could help define the playoff picture. Will Boston turn around their slumping ways when they take on the defending champion Golden State Warriors? Can Kawhi Leonard slow down James Harden and the Houston Rockets? You can join in on the excitement by going to betonline.ag. Over-unders, prop bets, futures, you name it, BetOnline has it. Once again, CLNS Media and BetOnline are offering you a 50% sign-up bonus if you use our code CLNS50 with your first deposit. Go to clnsmedia.com/win. Use promo code CLNS50 for your 50% sign-up bonus today. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Okay, moving back to the upcoming schedule.
I was looking at the schedule and just looking at some of the other teams that the Sixers are jockeying for position, and I think they have a really good chance to get the 3 seed. With my God, what a disaster the Celtics are! That effort they gave today for about 3 quarters was just awful. And then I know everybody says, "Oh, you got to remember the Pacers, and they're hanging on without Oladipo." And I agree, they've done a good job. They've lost 3 of 4 to pretty mediocre competition. They are, I don't know are they exactly tied with the Sixers right now? It's either they're tied or a half game.
No, they're a half game up.
Okay. Their schedule down the stretch is hard. It's the 6th hardest schedule.
Yep.
And so, I think realistically, it's going to be a big game next Sunday when those two play, and when the Sixers play the Celtics. I think just a few days after that, or maybe a couple weeks after that. But they'll get home games against both those teams. The other thing I wanted to note, just because we joked about what a nightmare first round matchup Brooklyn would be, there's no chance the Sixers are going to play Brooklyn in the first round.
No, and like you said, Pacers have the 6th most difficult schedule. The Sixers have the 6th easiest schedule.
Yeah.
They really, if you look up and down the Sixers' remaining schedule, like they've got one more against Houston, one more against the Pacers. I guess you could kind of include the Kings as a tough-ish game. One more against the Bucks, and one more against Boston. And then the last 10 or 12 games or so are really easy. And even before then, you've got the Magic and the Bulls, and there's Cavs are in there. There's a lot of really winnable games. If the Sixers, assuming health from Joel Embiid and the rest of the players, but Embiid because he's currently battling through the knee soreness. But assuming reasonably good health, they should win a lot of games coming up. I would be surprised if the Sixers don't move up to 3. And then you're looking at a Pacers Celtics 4-5, which is probably good for Boston, all things considered, for a team that is, like you mentioned, struggling really badly right now. And like you said, that would put them out of the range of the
Celtics in the first round.
Actually, yeah, but the Nets are currently the 6th seed.
Their schedule is so brutal down the stretch, man. I think it's the second hardest one.
The Nets?
You got to look at their schedule after March 13th. It is literally a hard game, and most of them on the road the rest of the way.
The problem, though, is the other 2 teams are Detroit and Orlando.
There's no shot. One of those is going to beat the Nets. I'm telling you. It's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would certainly say the Nets are the best team of those 3, but now that I look at it, you're right. Brooklyn does have the 3rd toughest. Orlando has the 5th easiest. And the Pistons are 22nd toughest. So, yeah, all right. Fair enough. Good.
What else we got?
The Nets do cause the Sixers.
Yeah.
Some of those games are fucking ugly. So.
Oh my God, they just pick and roll them to death, and yeah.
I would like to cover as many playoff games as I can, so that would be a good outcome.
Yeah. What do you make of Redick's struggles recently?
So, I think the real easy narrative is that it's because Joel Embiid's out.
It's
And because the struggles perfectly align with that, and the struggles are so bad. But he's had a lot of open looks that he's just missed. Like, there are times when you can see the tougher, defensive pressure. Like when he plays Boston, he struggles to get easy looks. And it would be real easy to say, like, he doesn't have Joel, so he's not getting easy looks. Is there like a degree of truth to that? For sure. Like, Joel gets him space. There's no doubting that. But he's also had a heck of a lot of really easy looks lately that he's just, he blew a layup the other day. He blew a floater yesterday. Wide open 3-pointer. Like, he's had very makeable shots that he's just missing. So I would say there's some portion of it that is Joel being out. And there's some portion of it where it's just a natural slump that you go through. And it looks really bad because they both kind of aligned at the same time.
Yeah, honestly, the Sixers going 3-2 in this stretch with Redick playing awful without Embiid is actually, like, it's not bad, when you look at the opponents. And he's shooting, I think in those last 5 games, I believe it's the same thing. I believe it's 25% from the field, 25% from 3. That's not great, Bob. And yeah, if you remember when Redick got Embiid sick and Embiid was joking about how he got him sick because Redick had missed a game due to rest and another one due to illness, and he gave him a hug and he was happy to see him and he was contagious. I think Redick is going to give him a pretty big hug when he sees him though because it's definitely a two-way street where the space that Redick gives and the gravity that he has gives Embiid space to roam on the block, but that dribble handoff it's JJ's bread and butter. And, I agree with you. He's just missing a lot of open looks, but when you're struggling, you want to get him back in the rhythm, what he's comfortable doing. And that's taking those handoffs from Joel. He's definitely struggled. It's funny. I was watching, I thought about this after the Thunder game when it seemed like Jimmy Butler was passing up layup after layup, and Mike wrote about that on The Athletic. I am stunned at how good like Jimmy Butler's on-off and advanced numbers are.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're basically right in line with the rest of his career. And it doesn't feel that way.
He's had a really weird couple of weeks. Like, he'll pass open shots. He'll have room coming off a pick and roll, or he'll have a mismatch in the post or in this isolation, and he'll just pass up those shots. And then he'll take a really high degree of difficulty shot, and then he'll get to the free throw line 7 times, and he'll look up at the end of the night, and he'll have like 26 and 6, and he'll be like, oh wow, it didn't even feel like that happened. So he's been really tough to gauge. His defense is on and off. Like, he'll have some plays where he's really, locking his guy down, and some plays where it seems like it's not quite there. He's been overall, on the whole, he's been good, but it still feels like there are times when it's been frustrating too. So it's just been weird.
Yeah,
I don't know how to describe it.
I agree. I'm wondering if that's a positive, because when it's not weird, or if they can get it to not be weird, are the numbers just going to be awesome? Is the impact going to be just crazy? The efficiency that he could play with. Speaking of the threes, I feel like the only 3 he likes taking are transition pull-ups on the right side of the floor. Whether that's a one that he pulls up on the dribble, or one that he'll get like a cross court pass from Simmons and he'll just fire right away. For somebody who's so reluctant to shoot threes, it's strange to me that on those he turns into JJ Redick hunting them, basically.
Yeah, he had gone what, I think, like, before that Golden State game, he had gone 5 games without making a 3. And that is not that's not great. And a lot of those are, it does seem like he passes up a lot of open catch and shoot threes still. And you wonder if maybe an easier look would help avert some of those down periods. It is good in some ways that he has been so willing to sacrifice his own offense
That's what we're asking him to do.
And not necessarily. It is. It is. We said if he scores 15 points and plays lockdown defense, we'll take that trade off with this talent. Like I think I said on my last pod, my issue is I think he's just not quite there defensively at that level, at least not consistently. So if my biggest complaint at the end of the season is that Jimmy Butler is happily taking a backseat offensively, like I'll live with that. I think this roster is constructed where you have so many different offensive talent and so many different people who can go one-on-one or attack a mismatch. When Butler gets a mismatch and lets him off the hook, that's where I'm going to be the most frustrated. But overall shot totals, I'm not, if he's happy in that 12 to 14 range, like he has been, at least for the beginning part of the Tobias Harris era, like that's great. I just want to see him when he has that clearly exploitable mismatch. I'd like to see it a little more frequently.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that defense come up to the level that I think we all hope for.
Yeah. And I feel like we complain about him a lot, but just looking at the impact, it seems like he's doing pretty good. And I wonder, even if I'm not totally thrilled when he runs those pick and rolls, and he hasn't been great in late game situations a lot, if we're being a little bit nitpicky, a little bit unfair to him, but I guess that's something we'll continue to look at. Speaking of that Oklahoma City game, Tobias Harris was so good in that game.
Incredible. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. He was, and I think even outside of Redick struggling, he did not play that well against Golden State. I felt like, I don't know, it felt like to me, I got to rewatch it, the second half, but it felt like he had somebody like Quinn Cook on him a lot, and he just didn't exploit that matchup in the way he did against Oklahoma City. But Oklahoma City, whether he had Steven Adams or Nerlens or Dennis Schroeder, all shapes and sizes, all speed type of players, he was just destroying them in a bunch of different ways. Getting to the cup, hitting step back threes. That was hopefully that's a preview of something the Sixers, when the playoffs get hard and there's a certain matchup they're willing to exploit. It was very easy offense. They were basically just trying to screen with Redick or somebody who they thought, sometimes it was Mike Scott, where they thought they'd get a mismatch onto Tobias, and he killed it.
Yeah, no, he struggled a little bit against Golden State. And for sure, if he would have had a little bit better of a game, they probably win that one. But up until that point, he had been just absolutely killing it. 22 on 55% shooting from the field. He has the way he can, I almost call him like a chameleon offensively. Like if they need him to just be a spot up 3-point shooter with Joel on the court and maybe attack a closeout and play in transition, he can do that. If they need him to bring the ball up, he can do that. If they need him to run a pick and roll when Embiid and Butler go to the bench, he can do that too. And the way he can score in a number of ways, it really does. Like he stepped on the team and he played a high level role, and he did so right off the bat with barely knowing any of the offense or any of his teammates. And that really speaks to his talent level. He's been real good, and I think he's going to be real good in the playoffs too. And he's made some one-on-one defensive plays too, which is nice to see. And I'm probably going to give him a hard time defensively because he has more than his fair share of lapses off the ball. But at the very least, you have a guy who's, 6'9" and has the physicality to be a spot up 3-point shooter with Joel on the court and maybe attack a closeout and play in transition. He can do that. If they need him to bring the ball up, he can do that. If they need him to run a pick and roll when Embiid and Butler go to the bench, he can do that too. And the way he can score in a number of ways, it really does. Like he stepped on the team and he played a high level role, and he did so right off the bat with barely knowing any of the offense or any of his teammates. And that really speaks to his talent level. He's been real good, and I think he's going to be real good in the playoffs too. And he's made some one-on-one defensive plays too, which is nice to see. And I'm probably going to